Mike and I were, when, I think it was when we went to Tennessee, I had a dry throat. And we stopped into something.
will not.
And
Vegetation on the left side
stores.
is different than the vegetation on the right side.
Called Beekeepers Natural.
I notice now.
California.
Depends. So what is it?
Move to fix the city seal.
No, I'm sure it's on purpose.
I'm sure it means something.
When the throat gets a little tickly.
You'll have to ask Trish, she just gave us.
Trish, why is the vegetation on the city seal asymmetrical?
Oh, yeah. Rick's gonna get home. I looked up the laurel, yeah. And it's just because of the way the direction goes all over. It goes this way, and then it's supposed to come around. See, it goes this way, and then it's supposed to be the flip side of it. So if you were to see the back side.
I'm going to call the special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on Monday, November 27th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. The prayer will be offered by Acting Clerk Mike O'Brien, and the pledge will be led by Alderman Jettie.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and clarity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us God. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance.
Thank you, Madam President. Alderman Michael B. O'Brien Sr. is present. Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Moran.
Here.
Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
here.
Alderman Clemmons.
Here.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Here.
Alderman Como. Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Gavea.
Here.
Alderman Sonite, excuse me. Alderman Theobald.
Here.
Alderwoman Timmons.
Yeah.
Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
Madam President, I have 14 members present.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn this meeting over to the Chair of Budget, Alderman Dowd.
Yes, this evening we have two public hearings on two pieces of legislation. The first is R-23-171, authorizing the mayor to enter into an amended federal aid project agreement with the state of New Hampshire for the purpose of constructing an accessible ramp to the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge and to accept and appropriate $724,186 for the project. And Director Cummings will give us a little overview of this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cummings, could you hold for 1 second? In my haste coming up, I forgot to hit the record button, and we are now recording. Thank you, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the committee. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. I rise before you to ask for your favorable consideration of R-23-171. What this is additional monies that were made available to us from the New Hampshire Department of Transportation for $724,186, and that money is going explicitly to the ADA accessible ramp off of the Cotton Mill pedestrian bridge on the Cotton Mill side of the Nashua River, or the northern riverbank, if you will. This is monies that we got, as I said, that was unanticipated. We originally got just over $300,000 through federally directed spending through Congresswoman Custer's efforts. And then because we were one of the few shovel-ready projects in the state of New Hampshire had some additional monies that they needed to expend and not turn back to US DOT. And so therefore they reached out to us and sought our assistance with trying to get this money infused into the project. The project is just over $1 million in total, so this will go a long way in almost fully funding the entire cost of the project. This is, again, an ADA accessibility project, one that we had committed to US DOT very early on in doing, because we had an ADA accessible ramp on the other side of the bridge. If you recall, that would be the clock tower side, but we didn't have one on the corresponding other side of the bridge. And so next year we would go under construction in earnest. We started already a few months back. Some of you may have been at the ribbon cutting or the shovel ceremony, but we will do the actual construction of this project in earnest in the spring, and we would anticipate it being done by early fall of 24. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before I open up the testimony, is there any questions that any of the aldermen might have of Director Cummings? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, I'll now open up testimony in favor of R23-171. Seeing none, I'll now open up testimony in opposition to R23-171. Seeing none, I will now reopen testimony in favor of R23-171. Seeing none, I'll now reopen testimony in opposition of R23-171. Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing on R23-171 at 7:06 p.m. The next public hearing is on R23-172, authorizing the city to enter into a community center investment program loan agreement with the Community Development Finance Authority and borrow an amount not to exceed $1 million for repairs and renovations of the Arlington Street Community Center. Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. And again, I rise before you and ask for your favorable consideration of R23-172. What this piece of legislation is, it is an award that we got from CDFA, a public-private statewide New Hampshire organization that looks to give out money for various types of community development type projects. City of Nashua was the recipient of what is termed a loan, but it acts essentially as a grant for $1 million for a community center renovation. And so the Arlington Street Community Center submitted an application. We were awarded this $1 million loan, which is forgivable. And so the way this works is the CDFA, as a matter of practice, issues their grants, if you will, in the form of a loan, but it's forgivable so long as you adhere to certain terms. And some of the terms relative to this is the Arlington Street Community Center would only be used for the next 10 years as a community center. And we have to use it for the explicit purposes that were outlined in the quote-unquote grant application. And so this is a renovation project. As some of you may or may not know, that building is very old. It was a former fire station. And so there is some serious deficiencies with the building. And so three main priorities that we would be looking to take care of is, one, making the building ADA accessible. After being ADA accessible, there's a rear wall that is failing. It's safe as of right now to habitate and occupy the building, but according to our building inspector, Bill McKinney, it is definitely deficient and something we need to pay attention to. So to continue using the building, no matter what, we're going to have to rehab the rear wall of the building. And then thirdly, we would be looking to make HVAC and mechanical type of upgrades. And so we have just over $1 million. There was a 20% match that was set aside in this year's fiscal budget for just over $200,000. We would be looking to do these three projects in earnest, and then anything additional that we're able to do in scope, we would look to add on to, whether that's roof repair, gutter replacement, typical quote-unquote building envelope type of improvements, brick repointing, window replacement. These would all be items we would explore as we continued along with the project. We would anticipate going under construction this spring. It will take us, I would say, a solid 6 to 8 months of construction. We try to wrap it up in calendar year 2024. I'd be happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Before I open up the testimony, are there any questions?
I have questions.
All right, I saw Alderman Melbourne first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Cummings, this forgivable loan, are there any period of time where we would have to make any type of payments until it's forgiven?
No, there's no payments required.
Is there any follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
If we weren't to meet the forgivable requirements of the loan, would we be on the hook for any back interest or anything like that?
We would have an obligation to pay back the loan if we weren't to adhere to basically the terms of the contract with CDFA. And the big one is the building being put into service, being used as a community center, and then making the repairs as I just outlined. If we were to use it for other reasons, that would put us in potential jeopardy or default, but that is definitely not our intention if anyone knows that building.
Great, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And one final question. Could you just remind the citizens what is done at the community center so we can, everyone can understand why we need to fix this place?
Mr. Chairman, Alderman Moran raises an excellent point. We've actually prepared a slide deck for you answering those exact questions. We're going to do that at the committee level. Jessica Haig, the director, is here this evening. We're going to spend about 5 to 10 minutes giving everyone a quick orientation as to what actually occurs at the Arlington Street Community Center, but in consultation with the chair, it was advised best to do that at the committee meeting.
Great, thank you.
Alderman Clee, then Alderman Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is just that there's two parts to that building. If we were to use the other part, I know it's in rough shape, but if we were to use the other part of that building, that would not violate the terms of this, as long as we maintain a community center. Doesn't have to be the entire building, just at least the part that we are using now. Is that correct?
That's correct. It is two separate, distinct structures. Wherever we were to make the improvements, we would have to commit to keeping it as a community center. And $1 million for a building project like this is not very far. I would suggest we wouldn't even be able to entertain doing anything in the second building.
Follow up?
Yes, please, thank you. Yeah, no, I was not assuming that we would. I just, if the city decided at a later date to use that piece for something else, that's all I just wanted to clarify, so thank you.
Alderman Lopez.
So I have two questions for Director Cummings. When you presented, you had said that one of the terms was going to be that it be used as a community center only for 10 years. Now, did you mean community center only, comma, for 10 years? Or were you thinking, or is there a concern that the community center might not be around after 10 years?
It could be longer than 10 years, but the minimum commitment for this to be considered in good standing is we would have to commit to maintaining the Arlington Street Community Center at that site for 10 years.
Okay, so your intention was to say that only a community center can be in that site, not that there might be a expiration date on it.
I can't forecast what will happen in the future. What I want to make this body aware of is over the next 10 years, it would need to be maintained as a community center. After that, you'd be free and clear to do whatever you liked at the facility, but I've never heard or I don't believe there's an ambition to do anything else but have it as a community center.
Okay. And then the second question I had was about, if you don't mind, a kind of different question, but with regards to the CDFA loan/grant, have we done these before? And is this the other loan/grant that has been referred to as a loan but might have been shown on our ridiculous presentation of how the CDFA system works as a grant?
Yeah, great question and somewhat nuanced. And so have we done this before? The answer to that is this specific program, we have not. Actually, as I understand it, this program that CDFA is putting out for community centers is a brand new program, actually. And so I believe we were actually in the first round to receive funds for that application. I think there'll be more rounds coming in the future. Putting that aside, within the organization of CDFA, I believe they tend to, I wouldn't say always, but they tend to offer their monies in the form of a loan. And they put certain terms in, and then it's forgiven. And then to answer your question specifically, yes, we have done this before for the Performing Arts Center for a tax credit program run through the CDFA for just over $400,000, I believe. They gave it to us in the form of a loan. And we had the similar type terms that they're asking for here. 10 years adherence, a mortgage or a lien put on that specific property.
That was it.
Yes, Alderman Timmons.
Oh, thank you, Linda. Director Cummings, since I was on the ground floor of the Arlington Street Community Center, which is like a baby to me, so I know the history of it. You said it was the fire station, but the fire station is actually the next door. That's the ballet. Just for clarification, is where the ballet studio used to be. And this is the second time it would be renovated because I was on the first renovation. So could you clarify those two structures for the public?
Sure. So I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I'm going to say it's something like 36 and 38 Arlington Street. And so if you were to be looking from Arlington Street at the two structures, the building to your right would be the quote-unquote fire station, and you'd know that because of the overhead doors. And then the building to the left would be more of like an office building, which you are absolutely correct. It has been renovated and used in years past as like a community center, and specifically ballet was housed at that facility for a good number of years here in the city. And then about 5-ish years ago, there was a few $100,000 in renovation done to the building. It might have been up to about $600,000, almost $500,000 of city money spent to make building improvements, base building improvements to the site.
May I have a
Follow-up?
Yes, thank you. Director Cummings, the building 38, is there any future plans for that building? Should it come down and be a parking lot and make more parking for that particular center?
I think that is a great question that I don't have a good answer to at this time. I would welcome an opportunity for this body, along with a few other stakeholders, to get together to talk about the future of the building. I would love to see that building put into productive use. And again, to be clear, we are not talking about the building that the Arlington Street Community Center is in right now. We're talking about the empty fire station where it could be used to the benefit of the community. I would not recommend tearing it down and making it a parking lot, but I do think we could probably find some better, more creative uses for the neighborhood's benefit.
All right. Thank you.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my question is about the terms. So, and I may have missed this, and I missed this, I'm sorry, Director Cummings. Are the terms in any of the documents that we got sent to us? Is there a lot of terms? I'm sorry if I missed it.
I believe the agreement was sent to you and
Okay.
is part of the resolution. And no, the two or three major terms are: it's structured as a loan, not as a traditional grant, 10-year commitment, and you need to use the funds how you described in your application.
Okay.
Those are the major terms.
Great, thank you. I'll take a look.
Yes, Alderman Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a really quick question in regard to the construction timeline. You're talking spring of 2024, 6 to 8 months. Do you anticipate any interruption in the use of the community center during that time?
Thank you. I think that is a really good question that until we have a construction manager on board and really studying it, I wouldn't be able to say with any definity or specificity, but I would believe our intention would be to keep it operational as much as possible.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Director Cummings.
Thank you.
All right, now I'll open up testimony in favor of R 23-172. Seeing none. Testimony in opposition of R 23-172. Please state your name and address for the record.
Beth Scare, 111 East Hobart Street. I'm in opposition to this because I live in Ward 7, and this seemed like a boondoggle to me from the very beginning. I don't know how much we paid for it, but we've already put in $500,000. Now you want to put another $1 million. It's a very old, dilapidated building. And how much are we paying in annual maintenance? I hope that figures in to this, into your decision. It just seems like good money thrown after bad. From the very beginning, I mean, at the beginning, it was being run by the Arlington Street Community Center Committee, and there was also the My Brothers Keepers Committee were both integral to starting the center, and then the whole thing just fizzled out. Both those committees just stopped meeting. Gosh knows what happened to it. It's like whoever was in charge just lost their enthusiasm for it. During the pandemic, it was closed for years. At one point, the former director said the HVAC system was unsalvageable. You know, had to have a whole new HVAC system, and then I heard nothing. That problem apparently just disappeared. I don't know what happened. Last time I went in there, I mean, it was just a trashy, old, dilapidated building. I don't know what else to say about it. It has a tiny parking lot. I think there's better things that could be done with this money. It's just sad that it's just like this was created as some kind of virtue signaling project, and it's fizzled out a long time ago, and now it's just dragging along, taking more money from our pockets. So that's it. Thank you.
Any other testimony in opposition? Seeing none, again, I will open up testimony in favor. Seeing none, I will now, once again, open it up for testimony in opposition. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:22 p.m. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make a motion that the November 27th, 2023 special meeting of the Board of Aldermen be adjourned.
Motion on the floor is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 7:22 p.m. We're going to open up budget in just a couple minutes. Okay, I'd like to open the Budget Review Committee. It's November 27th, 2023. It's 7:23 p.m. and we're in the Aldermatic Chamber. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman John Sullivan. Here. Alderman Ernie Stretti.
Here.
Alderman Tim Sennett.
Here.
Alderwoman at Large Shoshana Kelly.
I'm here.
Alderman at Large Laurie Wilshire.
Here.
Yours truly, Alderman at Large Michael B. O'Brien is present. And our chairman, Alderman Richard A. Dowd.
Present.
Okay, all committee members are present. Also in attendance is, we'll start over here, Alderman Clay, Alderman Clemmons, and Alderman Tierbo.
And Director Cummings.
And also in attendance is Director Cummings, Administrative Services Director.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone that would wish to speak on anything that's on the agenda? Seeing none. First item we have for presentation is benefits overview and update.
Yes, again, Mr. Chairman, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services. I'm not sure how best you'd like to do this, but we do have WBS Hub with us this evening, and we could come up to the Horseshoe, we could give the presentation here, but we do have a PowerPoint for you if and I'm not sure what the pleasure may be.
Why don't you come up, take a seat, and drive the presentation?
Excellent. We get some handouts that we can,
You know the password. Might have to open this up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm coming. Ouch. I got it. Oh, you all right? Yeah. I've done that before. Do you want me to use the, do you want me to use the overhead?
Yeah.
Either that or you just tell them you'll punch the.
Do I have to hit the clerk PC? Because I will bring it up, I think. Yeah, there we go.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, you got the, there you go. Uh-huh. Thank you. You have one extra for the record? Thank you kindly.
Are we all set, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Excellent. Again, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services, and with me is Tom. Tom is with Hub. He's our healthcare consultant relative to healthcare benefits. And I wanted to have this conversation this evening to provide an overview of the benefits we provide from a healthcare perspective, and then give you a little foresight into what we can anticipate over the coming years relative to providing these benefits for our employees. So with that being said, we have a PowerPoint presentation that Tom will go over with us. Tom?
Thank you very much. Again, Tom DeLacy from WBS Hub International Company. So if we...
Yep, you can do it, Yep, you're gonna just need to point at that computer.
Aim towards me.
Yep.
Like I'm shooting you?
Yep, there you go.
There we go. Okay, so thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate it. I'll try to go through these slides pretty quickly, leave plenty of time for comment, questions, and so on. You all have one in your possession, so you can make notes, and certainly happy to follow back up with people individually or come back and meet as you see fit. So just going to run through the agenda a little bit, who we are, talk about your self-funded medical plan. That's really where all the dollars are. You also offer a dental plan, life and disability, but all the dollars are really in the medical plan. A little bit of history of national benefits. It's probably been about 10 years since I've been here and done an overview like this. Talk about some of the challenges that we have, opportunities, and then next steps and suggestions. So WBS is a local company. We were founded by my partner and myself about 20 years ago. About 10, 11 years ago, we sold to a company called Hub International, fifth largest benefits brokerage company in the country, about 16, almost 17,000 employees now, several million clients, and so on. We really serve, WBS really serves as sort of the boutique, large market shop that focuses on municipalities as one specialty, hospitals as another specialty. So all of our businesses with large employers. Here are a few of them: Manchester School District, Town of Salem. We have a number of municipalities in Massachusetts, Dartmouth Hitchcock, Exeter Hospital, University of Maryland Medical System, just some of our large employers that we work with. And a lot of what we develop, we share that within our different genres and with different companies. So the things that we manage on your behalf is a self-funded medical plan. There's an HMO, a point of service, and an HSA plan. Majority of your membership is in the HSA plan. The HMO has kind of shrunk over time. And then the point of service plan there's very few people in that. I think it's under 15 at this point. We also have a self-funded dental plan, and I'll talk about what self-funded means so that you have a little bit more of a sense of what we're doing here. We actually have 8 different dental plans, and it's almost like if you've got a union, we've got a plan for you. So what we're really trying to do is, over time, many of those plans are very similar. So we're going to try to skinny those down to the extent that we can, make it easier on administration and the carriers that we're working with. We also offer life, short-term disability, long-term disability, and EAP coverage. Not all groups have short and long-term disability. Some do, some do not. We also offer a post-65 retiree medical plan. The city doesn't pay for that, but they do offer group coverage. And it's a Medicare Advantage plan that we've had for about 10 or 12 years now and had very, very good results. We've actually seen many of our other municipal clients move over to the Medicare Advantage plan, saving their retirees hundreds of dollars a month. We also work with you on leave management. This is becoming more and more complicated with federal medical leave initiatives, local medical leave initiatives, and then statewide. So there's a lot going on in that space, and we work with you to make sure that you're compliant and the employees are getting all of the information and all the leave benefits that they're available to them. And then finally, flexible spending accounts and COBRA. So just a little bit on self-funding. So if we think about health or insurance in general, most people are used to what we would call fully insured, meaning that you pay a premium, and if you have a claim, the insurance company pays the claim, subject maybe to a deductible on your auto insurance. But it's basically winner take all. You may not have claims for 20 years. The insurance company did great. And then you have a big claim in that year, you did great. Self-funded, when you get into the healthcare space, if you have over 300 or 400 employees, it's kind of a no-brainer. Basically, what we're doing is we're hiring an Anthem, a Cigna, an Aetna, or a third-party administrator to administer the claims for us. They're going to pay the claims. They're going to provide a network because we want those network discounts that they negotiate with the providers. They're going to provide medical management and case management and make sure they're doing everything they can to guide your employees through the healthcare system, make sure that they're getting the most value. They also are your claim fiduciary. They're the ones that say, yes, this is a covered benefit. No, that's not a covered benefit. You as the plan sponsor don't want to be involved in those decisions. You want the administrator to do that. For that, we pay a fixed fee. I think it's about $40 per employee per month. Really pretty low. The employer also chooses a pharmacy benefit manager. If we go back 15 years ago, not really a big deal. Now it's a very big deal. You can either have that carved in with the administrator or carved out to a third party. We have pharmacy carved in with Anthem. It makes things much easier, but we do go out to third-party markets to try to leverage to get the very best deal we can from Anthem. So we're negotiating fixed costs and we're negotiating pharmacy programs, and I'll talk a little bit about that. By negotiating that, we get improved discounts. Basically, pharmacy benefit managers, they might get a 25% discount from the drug manufacturer, and they might be willing to give us 15% or 17% or 18%. That spread, they keep. Our job is to negotiate as much of that and get rid of as much of that spread as possible. The last part is we receive manufacturer rebates. That's a really big deal, and we'll talk more about that. In a self-funded plan, the employer assumes the risk. And so what do they get for that? Well, you eliminate a 2% state premium tax. You save 3 to 5% in claim margin, because if a carrier is going to take the risk on 30 or 40 or $50 million of claims, they know they're not going to get it exact. So they want to have a buffer there so that they have their normal profit that they're hoping for, plus some kind of claim fluctuation buffer. And then pharmacy savings. We get the savings on the discount. We also get the savings on the pharmacy rebates. Pharmacy rebates are, and sometimes called concessions, you may have heard about them. Think of a manufacturer who's trying to get their drug out to market. And it's almost like, I always think about it like a store shelf. If I've got a product and I'm in the grocery store, where do I want to have that? I want to have it at an end cap, or maybe I want to have it at eye level. I'm willing to give up something for that. These rebates, the manufacturers are willing to give up a percentage of the cost. And you have to be a little bit careful here. So we don't want to chase rebates to have the very expensive drug when there's a less expensive brand alternative. So we're always walking that tightrope. And we'll talk a little bit about some other pharmacy programs. But this is literally millions of dollars that's coming back to the city. And then finally, because we're taking the risk, we buy stop loss. And stop loss says for any claimant, any individual on the plan, so it could be an employee, could be a spouse, could be a child, there's going to be a cap. There's going to be a maximum that the plan will pay for that individual. and then the rest gets paid by the stop-loss carrier. So relatively small dollars to buy this coverage that if someone has $1 million claim, which, again, 15 years ago, those were, they didn't happen. You heard about them, but you never saw them. Well, now we see them all the time. The stop-loss picks up anything over $350,000. So that gives us some kind of guardrails on our expenses. Whoa. Okay. So to give you some perspective, in fiscal year 2023, spent about $46 million. Administrative fees, that fee that we pay to Anthem to run the plan for us, is about 2.5%, about $1.2 million. Stop loss, the premium that we paid to cover those large claims, $1.8 million. Medical claims were $33 million, pharmacy 7.7, and then we have the employer contribution to the HSA. So with the health savings account, the employer makes a contribution to that. And the HSA, we've always believed and has proven to be the most efficient way to offer health insurance coverage to your employees. Really important to note here, pharmacy rebates returned to the plan, $2.6 million in the 2023 plan year. And then stop-loss reimbursements were about $1.1 million. We actually had a conversation a number of years ago of where should we be with that stop-loss? What's the right number? We're paying more in than we're getting. That is really kind of a fixed dollar insurance that you're buying, kind of a fully insured premium. We don't expect that we're going to make money on that over time, but we try to keep that really narrow. So we shop the stop-loss every year because it's completely blind to the employees.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
may I ask a question?
Do you want the questions now or when we get through?
Sure. As long as we don't get too many and get bogged down.
It's just kind of a quick question. It was more about rebates. When I was a state rep up in the State House, they were trying to stop pharmaceutical rebates in the state. Would that, if they did pass that, would that affect us? I'm sorry, I'm not talking very well. Would that affect us with this plan?
Yeah, I think really what they've been trying to do at the state and federal level is say, hey, we're happy to have those rebates, but we want them to go to the person buying the drug at the point of sale. So we don't want, drug manufacturer, we don't want you to keep that $2.6 million. We want it to go to the member at the point of sale. So instead of the drug being $300, it's $250, and the $50 rebate goes to the member.
Just a real quick follow-up.
Follow-up?
Yeah, so just so that I understand it, what you're saying is that they're saying no rebates if, instead of doing rebate, reduce the price of the
Correct.
medication? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, and that really gets it to the end user.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. So really important point there is when we look at administrative fees and stop loss, roughly $3 million, we're getting back about $2.6 million in pharmacy rebates. So we've really squeezed as much blood out of this stone as we're going to. And the areas where you can save money is in the medical and pharmacy claims, and that's really what we need to focus on. So, some headwinds. These are trends from the major carriers, Anthem, Cigna, Harvard, United. They're averaging a little over 9%. This is, and when we say trend in our industry, we basically mean inflation, okay? Trend over the last several years has been in the 6-7% range. With sort of post-COVID and what I call the post-COVID hangover, it's really jumped up. So this is going to really impact us. And we're seeing it play out all the time as we see providers coming to the carriers and saying, hey, our nursing costs are up 50%. We can't do a 2% raise this year or a 3%. We need 10, 12, 15. We're seeing even numbers as high as 20. Which isn't palatable. The carriers are pushing back on that, but certainly hospitals have experienced, cost increase like the rest of the world. And when we think about trend, a lot of times, people will say, well, medical inflation or medical trend, it's the doctors, it's the hospitals, it's the pharmacy, it's this one sort of boogeyman. The reality is, it's a bunch of factors that drive that. Some of it's just pure cost inflation. Some of it's drugs and devices coming on the market that are better, but they're far more expensive. So it's a better treatment, it's a better result, but it's more expensive. increased consumer demand. We actually saw a dip in that with COVID, and mostly because people couldn't get access. And then we saw a jump up after that, and we're still seeing some of the effects of that. So there's a lot of things that go into that 9.5% trend. So we're sitting here at about $46 million. 5 years from now, if we do nothing at 9%, that's $62 million. It's interesting, I was looking at a slide that, we did a very similar slide about, I think it was around 2010, 2011. And if we did nothing in 2015, we would have been at about $45 million. We did do some things. We moved to the HSA. We started getting people involved in the cost of healthcare, and I think we need to regain that. So this is how we've actually done versus trend. And forgive me here because I'm going to mix up some things. So here we're using total plan dollars. In this one, we're using dollars per employee per year. And the reason that we look at things in a per employee per year basis is so that we get rid of the noise of changes in enrollment. So if we look back in 2011, 2012, we had 2,400 people on the plan. Now we've got about 2,000. So that's why we use that per employee per month. So if we go back to fiscal 2011, you're at about $13,200 per employee per year. The red line is what trend has been from the major carriers each one of those years up to 2023. The blue line is your results. And you can see over different periods of time, pretty flat, 2 or 3% a year. We had a little bit of a spike in 17, flattened out in 18, 19, went down in 20 with COVID, and then has really kind of jumped back up over the last couple of years. And what we really want to do is bring this to everyone's attention to say, you know, we need to get on this, we need to control it a little bit better. The trend over that period of time based on PricewaterhouseCoopers was 6.4% after benefit adjustments. So little tweaks in copays and deductibles and so on. Your average was about 4.8. We haven't made very many changes in benefit.
Yeah. Alderman O'Brien, could you just maybe click out off that box? Yeah.
You want next?
No.
Nope, just click out of it.
Click in a blank spot.
Click in a blank spot.
Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. This is a 2023 dashboard. There's a lot on here. This is what we go through with Tim and finance. The big thing your eye goes right to it, the speedometer right at the top. Last year, fiscal 2023, we ran 111% of budget. That's the highest we've ever run relative to our set budget. And in the middle left, you see that blue area is what the budget is, and the green is where we were over that budget. Almost every month we were over budget. And a lot of this is driven by large claims and really what we kind of think of as the post-COVID hangover. This is year-to-date through October, so the first 4 months of this year, we're at 96%. So we always want to be in the green, so we're doing better, but still cautious. Just plan relativities. So this is a slide that I think is beneficial. This really looks at cost share, meaning of a claim dollar, how much is paid by the employer or the plan, how much is paid by the member out of their pocket, co-pays, deductibles, things of that nature. This is based off of your HMO, and it follows pretty well with the HSA and the other plans. So right now, about 92% of the dollar is borne by the health plan. Customer 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all municipalities in the Anthem book of business. Customer 5 is just their average plan in their book of business, hundreds of thousands of members. So you'll see that in the municipal sector, 90, 91 or so is kind of an average of where plan value is. In the non-municipal sector, it's more in the mid to high 70s. I don't think that that's a shock to anyone, but it just tells you kind of where you are relative to your peers. you're maybe slightly higher, but you're in the range. And from a cost perspective, you're a little bit higher than, say, a Manchester, a little bit lower than a Salem. So I think I double-clicked there, but just a little history. 2019 was the last time we did a major RFP. We consolidated the plans, and for any of you who were here at the time, you had Harvard and Anthem. And it was really hard. We worked over a number of years to say, hey, the Harvard enrollment is dwindling, the Anthem is growing. Anthem was 85% of the block. We were able to get better pricing from both carriers if we went to just one. Ultimately, we chose Anthem, better pricing. They had a really good transparency tool that we'll talk about called Smart Shopper, which gives you incentives to use the high-value, more efficient provider. We did a pharmacy RFP integrated with Anthem, enhanced discounts, and pharmacy rebates, and the end result was about $1 million of savings. Around the same time, actually a little bit earlier than that, we did the post-65 retiree. We transitioned that. It used to be funded by the city on the self-funded plan. These are people that the city is not financially responsible for, so it's the retirees over age 60 that are on Medicare. So we wanted to take them out of your risk because you weren't contributing to that, but if there was a bad year in that pool and they ran over budget, you actually would end up contributing because you needed to make up those claims. So it's important to get them out of there. We went to a fully insured Medicare Advantage plan. The savings, depending on which plan you were coming from, because there were 3 offered, was anywhere from 20 to 50%. Going back to the last 10 years, the actual total is within 5% of what that 2014 rate was. So the retirees have fared very, very well. So challenges. I've talked about these things a little bit. Consolidation. Over the last 3-4 years, you've seen it in hospitals in New Hampshire, and there continues to be consolidation. You've seen it with carriers. You've seen, carriers buying each other up. And the reality is, everyone is looking for greater leverage. We're also seeing what I've mentioned a couple of times, the COVID-19 hangover. I think I should trademark that. But it really is, when you think about all of that deferred care that people couldn't have. My mother-in-law couldn't have her cancer treatment for almost 10 months through COVID. So a lot of care was deferred. And what we're seeing from the carriers, they're telling us anecdotally, when we used to see 70% of cancer cases be stage 1 or 2, and 30%, 3 or 4, it's flipped. So you think of the cost and just the people that we have lost or will lose just because they had that period of 12, 18, maybe even more months without the care that they should have had. Pharmacy spend, specialty pharmacy is a huge thing. The biggest part of that is gene therapy. Weight loss drugs are kind of a buzz right now. Gene therapy is really the big dollar, but some amazing stuff being done. So relative to consolidation, in Mass General, they kind of got shut down in Massachusetts. They weren't going to be able to acquire anything else, so what did they do? Like everybody in Massachusetts does, they come over the border for a better deal. So they acquired Wentworth Douglas. They just finished acquiring Exeter Health. Elliott Health System in Southern New Hampshire merged to form Solution Health. Dartmouth Hitchcock and Catholic Medical Center kind of joined operations for a little bit. A full merger wasn't allowed, but now CMC is in talks with HCA, which is a for-profit hospital organization. So kind of interesting to think about a Catholic hospital maybe teaming up with a for-profit hospital. CVS, your corner drugstore, and their PBM Caremark bought Aetna Healthcare. 3rd largest health insurance company in the country. Just shows you how much you make in pharmaceuticals and so on. Cigna in turn then went and bought Express Scripts, at the time the largest pharmacy benefit manager. And United Healthcare expanded Optum RX, which is the 3rd largest pharmacy benefit manager. So you can see that they're all trying to control that pharmacy space because that's where the money is. So the question out there, I don't think we're going to answer it, but does consolidation reduce cost? or does it add cost to the system? You know, hey, we're going to buy tissues and toilet paper in bulk. That's going to save money. I don't know. So, specialty pharmacy. I think everybody's probably heard of drugs like, you know, Humira, things like that. We've seen specialty drugs go in 2016 from $200 billion to over $300 billion in a 5-year period. And it's not slowing down at all. But what we are seeing is biosimilars finally coming to the market. So your Humiras, there's now a biosimilar. Now it's not like a generic where I might be taking a brand name drug, a generic comes on the market, it's the same active ingredients, the only difference might be a different dissolving agent, different filler. Drugs are different. So somebody who's on Humira, they're not going to come off Humira and go on to a biosimilar. But the person who now needs that treatment probably will start with the biosimilar. So we think that drug spend of $28.5 billion on Humira probably is going to drop to about $20 billion over the next few years. So some good news on that with the biosimilar.
Alderman Dowd?
Yes. Oh, bullshit.
Thank you. I have a question about this because it's something like Enbrel. I mean, if somebody's on Enbrel and they use it, it's up to $90,000 a year just for that one is it biologic? Is that what it is?
Yeah, yep.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, you have one employee who now all of a sudden needs $90,000 worth of one prescription.
Yeah, and employers have just been, you know, it's going into the mix of all the costs. Now, there is some upside too, because there were former treatments for that were very expensive. They might have been hospitalizations, might have led to organ failure. And so the drug that you're getting that's very expensive is maybe potentially keeping you out of the hospital years down the road. But really, employers have just been absorbing the cost over the last 5 years or so. Where it really is going to get interesting is when you get to the next thing, which is gene therapy drugs. So Luxturna, $850,000. It came out at $1.2 million. Hemgenix treats hemophilia B, $3.5 million. Now the upside of these are one-time treatments. You have the treatment, you're cured. It's amazing. Luxturna. For children who have a rare eye disease that causes blindness, it actually cures blindness in children for $900,000 per eye. So how do you say no? You kind of can't, but how do you pay for it? Now, the benefit of these, again, is they're one-time costs. So if we go back to our conversation about stop loss, so if the stop loss carrier can't predict that somebody in your group is going to have this next year, then you're going to pay the first $350,000 of that, and they're going to pay the next $3.2 million of Hemgenix. The problem comes, there's 16 cell and gene therapies on the market right now, 32 more on the way. Some of those, you're going to be able to tell what they treat and if that person is in your population. So we and the industry need to figure out a way to deal with this. One of the things that we do with all of our clients is we say, hey, there's a rate cap. If you want to write the business this year, there's a rate cap next year. And there's something called no new lasers. And a laser basically is just lasering out an individual saying, hey, we think Tom's going to need one of these drugs next year. So instead of us covering him at $350,000, we're going to cover him after $1 million. So Nashville, you own the first $1 million for Tom, just $350,000 for everybody else. So
Tom's a made-up name.
Yeah. Isn't that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Isn't that discrimination?
What?
I said, isn't that discrimination, what you're describing?
what the carriers are doing?
Yes.
They would call it underwriting. You know what? I've never really thought about it relative to discrimination. But if you think about it, you can discriminate smoker, non-smoker. So it is legal, but will it be challenged from that basis? It's interesting, maybe.
I would think it's discrimination, but thank you.
So, having said all that, there are some opportunities. And the gene therapies, those things, there's ways to deal with that. And we've got some ways saying, hey, no new lasers, you can't laser out someone, rate caps, pools will start to develop where you can pay $3, $4, $5 per employee per month to be in this gene therapy pool. And if you get a bunch of these claims, the pool just pays for it. So there's ways that we'll be able to deal with that, but there will be an impact because there's going to be more claims up to that $350,000 threshold than there otherwise would have been. Opportunities, outpatient surgery, high-cost imaging, lab services, urgent care versus ER, low-value drugs. These are all things that are kind of out there, and what we're trying to do is focus in on value. So one thing about healthcare is that there is tremendous variation in costs with no discernible difference in quality. And actually, the people that do things a lot generally have better quality and usually have a lower price. So healthcare is a little bit different. If you go in to a store and if you buy the brand name tissue, you know that's going to be better than the store brand tissue or the generic tissue. Drugs, healthcare, generally not the case. So just some interesting data here, and these are opportunities that we have. So when we think about an outpatient surgery, so I've got to go get a knee replacement, a shoulder, a hip, I've got to get hand surgery, something that's optional that I can choose. It's not like I've got to be rushed to the emergency room and have surgery, but something that's done on an outpatient basis. The cost in the previous plan year, if it was done at an ambulatory surgical center, so Nashua Ambulatory Surgical, Bedford Ambulatory Surgical, Elliott one day, Southern New Hampshire one day, those where you go in the morning, you have the procedure, you're out in the afternoon, and you're resting at home. The cost, $3,000 if it's done at an ASC, $9,400 if it's done at a hospital. In the most current year, $3,086 at the ASC, so about the same, about $10,700 done at a hospital. Our goal is to get people to go to the ambulatory surgical center whenever possible. And I've been, I guess, unfortunate enough to have to use them 3 times, and the experience is far better. One great thing about an ambulatory surgical center, if you're sick, they cancel your surgery. They send you home. They don't want sick people there. If you're in the hospital, well, who's in the hospital? Sick people. So infection rates are lower at ambulatory surgical centers, and results are usually much better. Surgery comparison by site. So this is, if we go back to us running 111% of budget last year, if we look to the previous year, 47% of surgeries that could be done at an ASC were done there, 52% were done at a hospital. That was better than all other groups at 42% and 57%. But if we look in the current period, we dropped from 47% all the way down to 41.5%, where all other groups remained about the same, 42%. So.
Alderman Clee?
Yeah, I'm sorry. One of the things that I see when I look at this really quickly, the comparison of ambulatory care services versus hospital, the cost to the patient is only $100 difference. And so for the patient, they don't see it as a cost benefit to have it done one versus the other. And I think that is kind of so if someone said to me, you can do $100, but you can stay in the hospital, I'm more likely to say, okay, I'm going to stay in the hospital so I don't have to go home and take care of that. So I don't see the current plan as them wanting to help. So
Yeah,
comment, yeah.
No, that's an excellent observation, and you stole my thunder a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. No, everybody heard it, so that's perfect. So one of the things we're going to talk about at the very end in just a couple minutes is we need to think about some potential changes to drive that. Now, one of the things that we have to drive that is if you call Smart Shopper or shop online and you go to the ambulatory surgical center, if it's an outpatient surgery, it's probably a $250 to $500 reward for going to the ambulatory surgical center, which if you're in the HSA, covers the difference between what your deductible is for a single person and what the city contributes to your health savings account. So just looking at on the left, this is utopia. Everything that can be done at an ASC is done there, $3 million. The actual, we're spending about $7 million on those surgeries. Worst case is $10 million. So we're not doing terrible. Again, we're in that mid 40% range. But if we can move 10 percentage points more, that's big savings. Independent hospital lab. This is such an easy one. Go to LabCorp or Quest. It's so much less expensive. Instead of getting your results that day, you probably get them the next day. And you just look at the cost. $27 versus $69, or $26 versus $64. And you can call Smart Shopper on this as well and get a reward. It's $25. But this is something you don't have to think a whole lot about. LabCorp Quest. And that's going to be part of the education that we should be doing. So again, the sort of utopia slide, 990 on the far left, 2.4 if everything was done in a hospital, and we're at about $2 million. So this is a huge opportunity and really, really easy. This is low-hanging fruit. So Smart Shopper, I talked about a little bit. So this is the program that we put in. This actually started in Manchester, New Hampshire 12 years ago. Now it's in 37 states, and it's a big company. It's been sold a number of times, but it's a great idea. And what it really is doing is saying, what's the cost difference between different services, and can we give people an incentive to go to the high-value, lower-cost facility? So if we look on the left-hand side, we can see the savings we've accumulated. Probably that all adds up to 150,000 or so. But look on the right side, the opportunity missed. It's almost $6 million. So getting people to use that, earning their rewards, using the high-value facility. And again, all the facilities that we're talking about, they're all in the Anthem network. They're all vetted by Anthem every 2 years. It's not, Uncle Bob's MRI. These are all vetted, high-quality facilities.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. May I ask a question through you? Yeah, so when we look at these statistics here, how are you including in here the folks who are going through like catastrophic events, like somebody dealing with cancer, somebody dealing with, we'll just use that as an example. Like, so if they're diagnosed with something like that, right? Let's say they did do the Smart Shopper at first, and then they get really bad news, and then they're just going to the hospital from this point on. How many of those people are in that missed opportunity group? What's the percentage-wise of that, let's say that lab blood work of that 1.5 million? Is it most somebody like that, or are you talking about, are these just everyday healthy people?
Yes, so this data is for your entire group. So you're going to have 3 to 5% of your group that's going to be really, really sick. But these are all outpatient opportunities. So if someone's inpatient, they're not counted in here. They don't have they're not going to leave the hospital and run over to LabCorp or something like that. So those people that are inpatient in a health sort of crisis, I would say, really tend to not be in this data. But certainly there are some people that have chronic illnesses that are getting blood work all the time that are in this data.
Do you know approximately what that percentage would be, like if you were to look at that number?
I don't. I think we could probably drill down into it, so we could.
I'd be curious to see if you could.
I think we could probably put a threshold. If somebody's got more than $50,000 in total services in a year, you know, if they weren't in that number, what it would look like. I
Okay.
think we could do that.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think this is really the last, or last couple slides here. This is really just looking at the cost impact of some small changes. And this was looking at some changes around the pharmacy program and getting, eliminating low-value drugs. I mean, there's a drug out there that is Pepcid and ibuprofen combined into one. It's $1,200 a month. There are a lot of low-value drugs out there. You know, Nexium, you can get Nexium over the counter. I think 42 pills is like $30. Or you can still get a prescription for Nexium, and it's $300 for 30 days. So there's some different things that we can do, and by doing a few little tweaks, it really changes that number over time. Kind of like what you saw in the first slide where we said this was trend and this was your actual results. Well, if you look, if we were at trend in 2023, it's about an $8 million difference if we had stayed at trend versus what we actually were at.
Alderman Clay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about what you were just talking about, those low-value drugs. And Nexium was one that you were specific about. I was on Nexium, and when that became an over-the-counter drug, I have a federal anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield. They don't cover it. If it's over-the-counter, regardless of, and it's the same thing with ibuprofen, unless it's at 800 milligrams, they would not cover it. Are you saying that we've been covering that?
Yes.
Okay, that's going to change.
And what the federal program is,
Yeah.
that's the kind of change we would be talking about.
Okay, thank you.
And I bring up Nexium because I take it half the years. I love Nexium, but I buy it over the counter.
Yeah,
I have
me
a
too.
question. I would say 99% of the time that you are told to take a drug, it's from a physician. And are we saying that they're not making the distinction and saying, hey, you can get this under over the counter, or?
The example I gave of Pepcid and ibuprofen, I think everybody's kind of got the message on that one. So it's an out there example, but there are a lot of other examples. But yes, sometimes doctors aren't looking at that, and it really is the health plan saying, so they're doing two things. One, they're not covering it, and then they're going back to the provider and informing that, hey, were you aware that you could prescribe this, and it's, you know, a third of the cost, and the results are equal or better. So it's education on both sides.
Okay.
So speaking of education, these are going to be really hard for you to see. We have a tool that we've kind of developed in-house at Hub that really takes a look at your census and carves it up and into different categories or generations of workers. And the reason that I have this here is because a lot of what we're going to need to do is going to be focused on education. And when our communication and design team starts to work, the first thing they say is, get me the persona analysis so I can see what your population looks like, so I can figure out what's the best way to reach them. I'm not going to reach a baby boomer the same way I reach a Gen Z. Gen Z, text me, send me something 15, 20 seconds that I can get in a text click and I'm into it. Baby boomer, I want to talk to somebody. I want to have a conversation, figure out what's the right thing to do. I want to have a meeting, and I'll come to the meeting. So that's part of, and there's a lot of information here, but that's part of what this program does. And this is something that we talked about the other day, something that we thought was really kind of interesting. This, again, stratifies your employees and looks at those employees who may be coming off your plan, those on the far right, the others that may be coming on your plan, those 20 to 25-year-olds, new entrants, 111 of those. They're going to age out of their parents' plan in the next few years and come onto your plan. But an interesting thing we noted was the late-stage hire. 173 of your 0 to 1 year employees are over the age of 50. Why are they coming here, especially in a great job market or any municipality? the benefits. They value them, they're really good, so that's where they want to be. Which is great to benefits of, part of what you do is you want good benefits to attract people. But there's also the other side of that is the cost that it drives. And so that's why, again, we just, when we think of what do we want to do, what are the next steps, we don't want to take anything away from anybody. We want to try to manage costs, but we want to help people understand that variation of cost with no difference in quality. So we want to enhance our benefits communication. We want to make sure that people are understanding that if I use Smart Shopper, I can put some money in my pocket and I can save the city a bunch of money. Site of service options, there are plan designs that are focused around this. So to your point earlier of there isn't a lot of cost difference between the employee cost of one service versus another, that's what this plan design gets to. It's free if you go to the ambulatory surgical center. It's subject to deductible if you don't. Those low-value prescription drugs things we talked about, alternative plan options, and then engaging third parties to help steer employees. You know, should we be having a conversation with the local hospitals about how could we develop certain services that are done there at a lower cost and as being part of the community? Hey, we're going to drive our employees to you. We want a better value from you. So that was it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to quickly go back to slide 35, if we could, just two slides back. One more. Yeah, there we go. I just want to make sure folks understand, and one of the major reasons why I wanted to come out here this evening is to make sure folks are aware of the fact of the trajectory that we're on, which I think this slide does a good job in kind of teasing out and shows everyone. And the reason why I wanted to circle back to this is because I want to put it into context. Everything is relative to here. The pie is only so big in terms of money that we collect on the property taxes. And so when our benefits budget increases, and this is on a trajectory of about a 10-ish% year over year, could be more, 12, 13%, whatever it may be. Keep in the back of your mind that for every $2 to $2.5 million we collect is about 1% on the taxes. And so that's, and if you look at this right here, FY24 into FY25, that's about a 1% on the taxes right there, right there. And no other expenses being factored in. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tease this out, make you aware of it. And I'm doing this selfishly because, you know, come budget season, when you see this type of budget, I wanted to get this out of the way early, so you are aware of why we're seeing the costs drive the way they do. And before I take any questions, Mr. Chairman, I do want to just take a moment and recognize Kathy Fournier, the in-house benefits manager for the city, who's here with us this evening. She works most closely with Tom, and she's a recent hire with the city. She's been here for about 6
months on the 4th, so the 5th, yeah.
6 months now, and has a 20-year plus history in working in benefits administration. And I appreciate her being here this evening. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, we wanted to come this evening just to provide you an overview and a little bit of a forecast as to what we can anticipate.
So before I open up to others, I just want to say this is, I see this as a prelude to you coming back with some suggestions on healthcare costs. And I also assume that this will not have any impact on the FY24 budget that we just passed and the tax rate we just passed.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Anything we do would be for FY25.
Excellent answers. Alderman Clements and Alderman Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just on this slide here, the projections, some of these some of the things that were presented tonight sound like they would be plan changes, and I know that we're going to pass, it's on the agenda tonight, hopefully we'll pass another contract. A lot of these are union contracts. So would these changes if a contract has already been passed, is that going to affect, are these changes going to be in, they're obviously not gonna be in there. So when you look at these expected costs with changes, are you assuming that these are the collective bargaining agreements and the merit employees that are to come as they phase out? Or how is this projected?
Director Cummings?
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to take a stab at this, but Tom is here to correct me, and I promise you I'm going to get some of this wrong. So, Alderman Clemens, I'm going to say, you ask a really good question, and I think the answer is both, right? So expected costs to change, I think a lot of that is actually already built into our current plans. We just need to educate our employees about the differing type of options that are available to them. And ultimately, I think that is what will drive. If you notice, it's about a $2-ish million year over year. I think we can do that with our current offerings. To do more than that, though, I think that's going to take negotiation, and that would always affect future contracts. Nothing that's been negotiated.
If I could just follow
Can I get Tom to did I?
Spot on.
Really?
Okay, well, no, that's good news then, because basically what you're telling me is that there's things that we can do without really affecting, without having to go back to the bargaining table, essentially, with however many bargaining units we have in this city. I think we have like 20.
My multiple years in negotiating
Right,
contracts.
exactly. So no, that I appreciate.
Unless it benefits the employee, you're not gonna change that contract.
Correct. So no, I appreciate that, and I think, because I know in years past when we've had similar presentations, we have, the idea was, no, we're going to go to our biggest bargaining units and get some of those changes. So to see that these are things that we can do without having to do that, and we're able to save money, I think is a good thing. I also would like to see what we could do outside of that, so we can look to the future.
Just for the new alderman, there were 2 years that we get back to back where we were hit with over $1 million increase in insurance costs that really slammed our budget. Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I have a few questions. Piggybacking on that question, in the contracts that we approve, and I'm just asking because I don't know, but basically we're saying we're approving a contract and how much they pay in for the healthcare plan. Said plan could change as far as the benefits of it, but it doesn't change how much they pay into it. For example, the healthcare plan that they have, you talked a little bit about out of pocket for surgery at an ambulatory center as opposed to a hospital. Maybe you make the tweak to that plan. And my question maybe to you, Director Cummings, is that something that needs to be in there? I mean, it's not changing the amount that they pay into the plan, but the plan is going to modify a little bit to help control costs for the city.
So I am going to check what I'm about to say and get back to you tomorrow, but I actually think that would be something that would get negotiated.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do as well.
Follow-up question?
You did answer this on one of your last slides, because one of my questions was, you monitor what we do in relation to other plans, but are we competitive? And I would say that as a result of that last slide that we are.
Yes.
And my final question is, you had one slide in there, fiscal year 23, where we were at 111% actual to budget, and then so far through 4 months, I think, we're about 96%.
Yep.
Do you expect that overage to continue, 111%, give or take?
We don't. We think that was really, I said it many times, it's sort of that COVID hangover. When you see large claim activity really spike, it usually doesn't last. And so if you've seen years and years where you've had, $5-6 million of large claim spend, and all of a sudden it's 10, it doesn't usually stay at 10, it usually kind of drops back down. So, and I think the increase that we put into the rates for this year was adequate. Would I say we're going to stick at 96 the whole year? Probably not, because the way that the plans work, once people meet their deductibles, there's more of the dollars that go to the plan paying it versus the member paying it. Now, we factor that into the rates, but on, you know, in what we call trend adjusted, but it's still gonna, it'll still creep up over the course of the year.
One more.
Follow-up?
Sorry. This slide that we have up here, that cost escalation, that factors in, if we don't hire anybody else, that's at current employee roles stay level through the next 5 fiscal years.
Yep.
It'll still go up that much. Okay.
If we're running at trend.
Yep.
So if
Yep.
we just stay at trend. Now,
Okay.
historically, we haven't, but we've also made plan design changes that, so we made significant plan design changes, I think, in 2012, 13. But it took a long time for all the different groups to move into those plans. So it was almost, in a manner of speaking, it was almost like you were making little tweaks to the plans each year because people were going into the HSA from the higher cost HMO plans.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I'm done.
The other question I have is, I noticed you were basing it on current level of employees, but every one of our divisions is short people. Fire department, police department, DPW, city hall. So if we can find the people, we're gonna hire them. And has that been taken into account?
So we base these projections off of static number of employees. So your current number is based on the, I think it's 2,050.
So actual employees not projected?
Correct.
Or authorized?
Correct. And and again, we can do it again based on that. But as you're growing and shrinking, presumably the budget would grow and shrink as well. So if you lose 5% of your population, we wouldn't say we hit the number if we hit it exactly because you lost 5% of your population. Similarly, if you grew by 5%, we would expect the budget to increase by 5%.
Any other questions before we move on? Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I spent a lot of years in health insurance, probably almost 25, so this stuff's really familiar to me. So a couple of questions I had. Do we have a spousal surcharge currently?
We do not.
Okay, so that would be a way that we could drive some numbers down on that.
Yep.
Do we have a smoking one where we don't have that either? Now, are those things that would have to be added into a negotiating?
We do have I'll tease it a little bit, we do have a pretty creative solution on the spousal thing that we've talked a little bit about. It would be an enhancement, so I don't know, it would be something that we certainly would want to talk to the unions about. I don't know if it would have to be negotiated, but I can't imagine why they wouldn't be saying, yes, this is great.
Couple other follow-ups.
Follow-up?
So is there working in, outside of a city, we get programs, I work for Eversource, for instance, and they have programs, Get Healthier programs, and if you go here, they'll give you rewards and things like that, and, we try to drive as a company people to use, better choices in their lifestyles, not just whether it's an ambulatory or a hospital, right? More about lifestyle choices, ways to get mental health care as well, right? Not just the physical stuff that we're talking about. And when they do that, you get so many, I think for me, and maybe if I do all the things in the program, get like $500 or $600 off my premiums, things like that. Is that something that you guys are looking to offer? And again, would that have to be negotiated?
So there are some built-in incentive plans built into the Anthem structure. And I think we've done some different things over the years around getting a physical, for instance. That's kind of the gateway to your health care, is making sure you're having that annual physical and so on. But we can always try to expand on that. Part of the challenge is the dollars to pay out for that, but we do know there's generally value there.
Actually, our benefits manager, Kathy, has made it clear to me that she has some strong opinions and thoughts on this, that if she would
I
like to
do.
share some
I do.
with us. She's already internally brought this wellness type program up to me.
Yeah, right now, we're paying $2.8 million to our participants that have the HSA. They don't have to do anything for this money. Prior employers, you could earn $1,500 or $3,000 if you're married by doing something. Your physical, your assessment, your eye exam, your colonoscopy, your mammogram, your pap smears, these things, you got money, and you can earn up to $1,500 or $3,000 as a couple. It irks me that there's no, that we're giving away $2.8 million just because you're in the plan. So it's a huge expense, though, to add that incentive, but I don't think it would go over the 2.8 million. It's how people would perceive it. Now, they don't put a dime in. They only put in, get the employer match, and they don't put any money in, and then they cry when they haven't met that deductible and they owe another $500 out of their pocket. So it's accountability. And guess what? Our claims at Velcro from 2012 to last year when I left there, our claims increases were 21% a year because everybody's sick and we got our high claims, we got a stop loss, down to 4%. 1 year was 1% increase. Because you go for your colonoscopy, you go for these preventative exams, you find it at stage 1. You don't go, you're gonna find it at stage 3 or 4, costing the city so much more money in claims. So it's a mentality that wellness needs to be forefront in their minds, and using Smart Shopper. Those things need to be out there. Now, we are given $25,000 from Anthem as a wellness fund, and the goal would be to slowly move things into, for every person that has a mammogram or has one of these physicals in the year, will get a raffle or get a $25 gift card or something. We gotta create a feeling that I'm gonna be healthier if I get these done, and it will cost less to the city and eventually less increases year over year.
And Mr. Chairman, these ideas like a robust wellness program, prior community I worked in, there was a walking club where the benefits team started, where tried to encourage City Hall employees to go walk, and they go outside and walk for 20 minutes during their lunch break or whatever the case may be, or they would do fitness type things like steps, and they'd make it into a competition to see who got the most steps in a month or a year. These are all differing strategies and concepts that we'll look to talk about and introduce over the next years or so. Some of these things may need to be negotiated, some of these things won't be. But the point is when you develop a robust wellness program, it's about a culture. And it's really about trying to develop a culture here where we're looking to have a healthy workforce.
Last follow-up, please.
All right.
Last question for me. So, I mean, I think that's great. I think that's exactly the type of thing I was thinking about with the wellness. And again, if you're getting people healthier and catching things early, not only are you saving people money, but you're also getting healthier, right? You're also getting well. And I think that's important. So, maybe, like you said, the walking thing was exactly, a point I was going to make about getting City Hall employees and all the employees of the city to participate in things like that. And maybe you can do something with Get Nashua Healthy or something and go for it. So
we're going to have a new river walk right by the river, and I think it would be really cool if we could get city employees to walk our new river walk next year.
And Tim's going to lead the way.
Perfect, thank you.
So, by the way, we also, like in the police department, have a program where they can exceed their test requirements physically and get a day off.
Yes.
And I know I've seen them down at the Nashua High School track with timing somebody doing a lap or laps. And so that's kind of a neat thing. I'd like to move on to, we got other presentations and we got other business, unless it's really something you need to get out. Alderman Clee?
I don't really need to necessarily get it out, but when we're talking about this type of thing, so with Federal Lands and Blue Cross, we have the Blue Cross Health Assessment. Just by doing and answering those questions from year to year, they put $50 on a card that we can use towards our copay. Is that some of the things that you're talking about as well?
Yeah, those are some of the things that Kathy's talking about and certainly looking at. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. We'll move on to the next order of business, which is,
Mr. Chairman,
thank
we all
you very
set?
much for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Alderman Dow? Nice to meet you too.
Yes? Alderwoman Kelly?
I just wanted to ask, if I missed it, if there's next steps. Obviously, this was a really interesting presentation, lots of thoughts, but is there going to be another presentation? Like, what's going to be next step?
Oh, that's guaranteed.
May I,
You
Mr.
wanna answer
Chairman?
that? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just to provide some additional detail, what I would recommend is give us some time internally to develop some recommendations, and we'll come back before you to discuss some of these recommendations, to get an assessment of priorities, and then from there we can develop a plan to implement some of those recommendations over the spring.
Thank you.
The other presentation you want to do when we bring up that particular legislation, right? So
Yep.
we're done, okay. All right.
Thank you.
So, communications,
None.
unfinished business,
None.
new business resolutions.
Before us this evening is R-23-171, authorizing the mayor to enter into an amended federal aid project agreement with the state of New Hampshire for the purpose of constructing an accessible ramp to the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge, and to accept the appropriate of $724,186 for the project. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Are there any questions on R-23-171? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I fully intend to support this. There was just some wording in here, and I want to just ask for clarification, if I may. It refers to the project bond, R-21-193, passed 15 December of 21. Just in the bottom there, it just makes it look like, so that total bond was 21 million. And then I had to just double check on this for the total project cost of $1.6 million. That $1.6 million is the cost of making this ramp to the Cotton Mill Transfer Bridge. I was just asking for clarification on that.
Yep. Want to go up, Director Cummings?
It's 1.3.
1.3. Okay.
All set, or follow?
No, that's good.
Alderwoman Clee? Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we all recall, there was a gentleman that had come to the Board of Aldermen meeting and spoke about how he could get up onto the bridge from the, I'll call it the Ward 4 side, from one side, but then he could not get down. We tried working with those at the Cotton Mill to create an alternative of being able to go into the building and use their elevator to go up and down, and there was just no success to it. It just was not a workable plan. Getting this money, originally the $300,000, and now the $724,000 makes the project even more appetite-wise for us to do. And it's something that, it's not just that it's a nice thing to do, it's something we have to do. I know that they could go over to the bridge and get across, but when you put a handicap ramp on one side and you don't do it on the other, it's just not cool. So this is something that, in my opinion, is truly a no-brainer. We do have to pass this, and the Ward 3 side of it does need, and I'm glad that this was addressed. So I do appreciate if you do give a positive vote on this. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also before us this evening is R-23-172, authorizing the city to enter into a community center investment program loan agreement with the Community Development Finance Authority and borrow an amount not to exceed $1 million for repairs and renovations to the Arlington Street Community Center. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, before we ask any questions or anything, we have a presentation that Director Cummings would like to.
Yes, that's right, Mr. Chairman. And so we could do it right here. It's a quick 5-ish minute presentation. What we wanted to do is give you really an orientation as to what the Arlington Street Community Center does, so you have some context. And obviously, it goes hand in glove with the legislation before you, where we're hoping to make base building improvements to the building. So if I could, I'd just like to approach to change out the slide deck.
Mm-hmm.
You can stay right there. So again, for the record, Tim Cummings, Director of Administrative Services, and with me, the Director of the Arlington Street Community Center, Jessica Haig, who will give you the PowerPoint presentation. Just hit that slide, point it right towards that computer.
Okay. Okay, hi everybody. I'm just going to give you, like Tim mentioned, a brief overview of what life at the Arlington Street Community Center looks like. Whoa, boy. There we go. Oh, I skipped one, sorry. Okay, great. So this is our mission. The Arlington Street Community Center provides equitable opportunities for academic success, youth and family development, health and social services, and community engagement, especially among marginalized groups. So for academic success, we have, these are just some examples of our programs. So we have a preschool readiness program that we run at the center. It happens 3 days a week for half-day segments of time for ages 2 to 5. That's a picture from this morning over there. We also have academic tutoring on a weekly basis where we have free tutoring for people of all ages. And we also have educational classes that anybody in the community can come to. There's a powerful remote over here. I keep skipping them. There it is. Okay. So youth and family development, just one example, over the summer we had a Leaders Like Us camp where we held a leadership camp for young girls between the ages of 12 to 15. We have parent cafes every other month in collaboration with the Fatherhood Group of Greater Nashua. So those are just free events that build the resiliency factors in parents and caregivers. And we also have multiple community groups and events that take place at the center. So some of those would be local churches will host their AA groups at the center. 21st Century has programming that's after school care. The National Fatherhood Group meets there, National Family Network. We have self-care classes, language classes, school vacation kits, a lot of different after-school programs. For health and social services, we have partnerships with St. Joseph's Hospital and also the National Public Health Department. So last year with the fire department, we gave away over 200 coats to families in need here in Nashua. We also have fitness classes such as dance classes and yoga classes that are available free on a weekly basis. And we also have a pop-up pantry in collaboration with the United Way of Greater Nashua that usually serves between 30 to 40 people every Wednesday. For community engagements, we have community nights that we hold monthly. So those are just free community nights. They could be a trivia night, an arts night, a holiday celebration, where people can come and just meet other people in the Nashua community. So our most recent Halloween party this year, we had over 280 people Thank God it was nice outside. We could be outside. And we also, again, those community groups that I mentioned before will have their own events at the center as well. So since I started here in June of 2022, we've had over 900 individuals visit and be served by the Arlington Street Community Center. We have over 20 free recurring programs and events happening on a monthly basis. And we collaborate with over 20 community partners like United Way, Discover Dance, the National Public Library, Nashua Community Music School. It's a very long list. Basically, anybody that's doing good work in Nashua, we want to support them however we can. So that's what we do. And that's just a brief overview of what we have at the center.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as you can tell, the Arlington Street Community Center is a wonderful service that the city of Nashua provides for a neighborhood that is in a qualifying census tract as low and distressed, severely distressed technically. And I heard comments earlier tonight that touched upon that it is an old, tired building, and why are we doing what we're doing with this building? And I think this slide deck proves more than anything that we are, with just a very little, trying to touch the community in a way that will positively impact the neighborhood in the city of Nashua, that we will reap the benefit of over the days and years to come. So what we're here this evening asking for is permission to enter into a loan technically, but it's more like a grant because it will be forgiven so long as we adhere to the terms as they're articulated. And it doesn't cost anything in terms of the city other than the 20% match that we already have set aside and was put into the operational budget this year. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I ask for your favorable consideration tonight.
Yeah, I just want to mention that the monies that were spent initially when we took this building over to make it a community center were just enough items so that it could be used as a community center and to fix the things that were necessary. We did not do a complete renovation of that building at that time, and we knew downstream we were going to have to do some more.
That's absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman. So those buildings did not have an occupancy on it per se for certain levels of the building, and so we knew we needed to make some very basic improvements to be able to get the building up to a certain level for us to be able to use it like currently contemplated.
Alderman Tebow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, two questions. The first one I always ask, are we able to get this presentation after? Because then I can share it with my community.
I was going to mention that both of them should go as part of the minutes of this meeting.
All right, awesome. And then the bigger question is, so we heard earlier, like you said, someone had said throwing, I think, good money after bad or bad money after good. Whichever way it is, can you just reiterate the fact that, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong on saying this, this money, if we choose to say no to it, doesn't go anywhere else in the city. It's gone for good. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't accept this money. Is that accurate?
That is very accurate, Alderman. It will essentially, we would send a signal back to CDFA where they would use that money in other parts of the state.
Thank you.
Alderman Senate?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was some truth to what was spoken earlier tonight. The building is old. The building is tired. Alderman O'Brien could probably correct me on this if I'm off, but I believe the building is somewhere in the market of 130 years old. That's 130 years of service to our city in one capacity or another. But irrespective of that, Ms. Haig and the group over at the Arlington Street Community Center are doing great work with what they have at their disposal. As you mentioned, Alderman Dowd, there wasn't a complete rehab done. A lot of what they work with is provided on a volunteer basis or a donated basis. My family and I are frequent patrons of the Arlington Street Community Center. It's right around the corner from our house. And the fact that sticks out in my mind when we hear about the struggles that the building has is that this building, probably more than any demographic in our city, is serving children. They're partnering with the 21st Century Program at Dr. Crisp to provide more opportunities for those kids to engage in additional programs than what 21st might have the space to offer. And it's imperative that while we're using this historical building, we're providing a safe space for our children. And so I hope everyone here will join me tonight with a unanimous recommendation for this.
I have Alderman Cleve, then Alderman O'Brien, then Alderman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the comments that kind of bothered me was that during COVID, we did absolutely nothing. We didn't have people physically in the building, but if I remember correctly, there were still some Zoom things that were happening. There were kits that were being done and given out to the community and so on. So I would like to make this very clear that the previous director and those that volunteered there were still doing a lot of good for the community during COVID under the Arlington name and so on. And the fact that this is a low and distressed area, excuse me, I think it's imperative, much like what Alderman Senate had said, that we provide these kind of services. It is so important to these kids, and the fact that it's right outside of Dr. Crisp School also gives those students a place to go, maybe right after school, with different programs and so on. And I think that's important, especially for parents. I'm not saying that they need a babysitter, but a place for their children to go and to communicate. So I don't think we should give away money. I think if it's something that we've applied for and we can do, and I do believe, but I do have one quick question, just to ease people's mind. God forbid we have another COVID. But if we ever did have any kind of shutdown, if we did provide the services that we did before with Zoom and so on, would that qualify as still remaining as a community center? We're not using it for something else, so.
Correct,
Yeah.
that would qualify.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we get that out, to be very clear and so on, and I want to thank the good work, and I do share this with my Ward 3 community, let them know when different events are happening and so on, because I think it goes beyond Ward 7. I think there are other people. I know that people within French Hill and so on did go to the Halloween party, so we did help add to your 280 people, so.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, a couple points. Yes, and Alderwoman Clee hit upon it. This is for the entire city. Yes, it's in a certain neighborhood, but it is a citywide community center, and a lot of people from outside of the neighborhood do participate, which is wonderful. But it was originally conceived and placed in Ward 7 because of the designation of that census tract. And understanding that if we paid just a little additional attention and service to this vulnerable population, we know that it will pay dividends to us as a community as the years go on. By giving just a little additional support. We've had more than enough studies tell us this. So that was the philosophy in the site selection in relative to why the community center ended up where it did. I want to just touch upon one comment that was made that Alderman Clee just hit upon relative to the previous director. So the previous director did a yeoman's job during COVID. A lot of people don't realize, but she ran the point of preschool and child care during COVID on the city's behalf, participating day in and day out, organizing for the residents of Nashua so that they could have access to child care, and helped work very closely with, for example, the YMCA and Riviere College, University technically, to be able to provide the child care necessary when a lot of our child care providers weren't in operation. None of those efforts would have been done if it wasn't for the previous director's efforts, and to suggest that the Arlington Street Community Center did nothing during COVID couldn't be further from the truth.
Okay, I think Alderman O'Brien wants to give him some historical background on our fire station, and then we'll have Alderman Kelly.
Yeah, I do appreciate Alderman Senate for mentioning me. I was captain of that house for several years with a little bubble gum and some duct tape. I kept the heating system working in 38 Lake Street. Always enjoyed watching the outside rain come down the inside of my fire station. Used to complain to the city, and the city did nothing, nada. And we had people eating their meals. And I used to look next door to 36, and that had always had been in good shape. The history is, when they built that building, horses ran out of it. But when they went to motorized apparatus, the building was too small. So in the spare, basically less than 30 years, they had to build a quick, efficient, cheap building, and that's why 38 was built. And good luck, Mr. Cummings, if you want to repair that. I recommend soon before it falls down. But the thing is, I think the building is strong, looking at it. I know we have done the roof in the past and other different things. I agree with Alderman Clay, it's as close to a school, even though it's all citywide. But whenever you put anything, let's figure, what is the most important community anchor? And that's our schools. They're in every single neighborhood. So parents that go to the PTA or other different things that occur go around the schools. And to have that, I think the Crown Hill community is very fortunate to have it. We do another one, I'll take one in Ward 9. But maybe we should. Where I grew up in Boston, they were all over the place. What I mean? But I think Mr. Cummings can verify that, and West Roxbury probably has one.
The Roach Center, right on Center Street.
There you go, absolutely. So it's something that needs to be done, and I'm going to definitely support this, because when you're building a building, and Alderman Dowd and I have been involved with building projects, $1 million, that's a lot of money. I grant it. I'm not going to pull the shades down on that one. But when it looks into the repair of a structure and what you're going to get out of it in the long term, it is money well spent. Because every year we delay, the problems will magnify themselves. And so any repairs that need to be done quickly and efficiently. So I'm going to support this. Thank you.
Alderwoman Kelly?
Thank you. Just a couple of comments and then a question. I just wanted to thank you so much for bringing this forward, for finding the money to make additional changes to this community center. I think that the idea of this community center came up early on in my first term, and I thought it was a smart and really thoughtful way to reuse a historic building, especially with how close it is to the school, et cetera. And it's very clear through the presentation we were given and anecdotally around the horseshoe that it has become a real community center for Nashua. So kudos to everybody on that. My question was, I know that the $1 million feels like a lot, but there is a lot to do. So what on the wish list is going to be remaining once you do all of these? Do we have enough time?
No, that's excellent question, Alderman Kelly. So we would have, so we're not going to know to be able to answer your question until we actually develop the scope and put it out to bid and get an understanding of what certain items are going to cost us per se. But we have everything from flooring that needs to be done, painting, typically what's referred to as finishes.
ADA ramp?
And we will, ADA accessibility, that will be highly prized, and so I think that will be one of the top things we will look to do is maintain ADA accessibility. We would need to achieve the shoring up of the rear wall. I assume that those two things will eat up most of the budget. And then anything left over, I suspect we will start to prioritize environmental sustainability type initiatives. So that would mean the HVAC system, I think first and foremost, something where we're not using chewing gum and glue. Duct tape, thank you. And then
we did use it.
And then we'll be looking at windows and those types of improvements are probably the types of improvements we actually won't get to with this grant, and we would actually need to develop a source of funds for those types of improvements later on. And I think, we'll be coming back before you to try to make those improvements over the coming months and years.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before? Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. So, I'm in favor of this. many years before Alderman O'Brien worked there in the fire station, I grew up on Crown Hill, and there used to be a library annex in this building. And so that's when I got introduced to reading books and going to the library. So I'm very fond of this particular building. But I wanted to say that the work that the Arlington Street Community Center does is so important. Working with children, preschool programs, I think are essential. I hope that sometime soon, preschool programs are available to everybody in the city. I think it would go a long way to, helping, students once they get into school. And, perhaps as our school population dwindles, maybe there'd be room in our school buildings to expand to a preschool program, which not only gives kids, a leg up, but it also, gives parents, an opportunity to work. It's a solution to childcare. So I'm really in favor of this, and I congratulate you and your people, for finding this money, not only on this project but the previous one. This is all money coming from the federal government, not the local taxpayer. So I applaud you for doing this, and I will, fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderwoman Clee?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. One of the comments I want to make is not so much a question, but pre-COVID, I actually attended stress meditation classes that they had. It was just an independent person that used the space to do that. So just so that the public knows, there are a lot of different services and that different groups, as you kind of pointed out, PAL and so on, that use that space. But it was very amazing space to have and to use. Rustic, the floor is a little bit rustic and so on, but it was still a really good place to be able to do that, and that sense of community, just going to that was just a really nice thing. So we talk about the children and so on, but there are some adult type things that are going on there, and I also like your calendar that you have. I have reprinted it many times, so thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Also before us this evening is R-23-176, approving the cost items of a collective bargaining agreement between the Nashua Public Library Board of Trustees and the Nashua Public Library Employees, AFT, FPE, local number 4831, from July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2026, and authorizing a related transfer. Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion to recommend final passage.
I see a couple of familiar faces that want to give us some insight into this contract.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jen McCormick. I'm the director at the library, and I'm joined by Linda LaFamme, the president of our Board of Trustees.
And we don't have any slides.
No.
Yay.
I would like to object to having our contract on the same agenda as the cost of employee benefits. Perhaps not kind. So I'll introduce this a little bit. The contract before you was a hard-won agreement. We started negotiations in February or March, and finally reached a tentative agreement in October. This contract is a 3-year contract. The major highlight for this group is that salary-wise, it moved changed our strategy from hiring rangers per grade. So many years ago. A couple of contracts ago, there was a salary grid. We eliminated that in favor of hiring ranges and negotiated cost of living increases. The union advocated for a return to a salary grid, and they really did the hard work of creating one that was equitable. So the grid that you see in the contract for year one of that, they placed current employees on the new grid according to their years of service, with a result of about a 3% increase per individual. Not everybody got the same increase, of course, because of the way the steps were laid out. Then in the second and third year of the salary grid, the steps all increase. By the way, there's 1.25% between each step, and the grid goes up 2.25% in years 2 and 3. So as a result, most employees will get an annual increase of about 3.5%. And I'd like to stress that that was a compromise reached between the board and the union. Other highlights that are maybe more relevant to administration of the library, the distribution of Sunday shifts was changed slightly, so it's more equitable. We added a paid holiday, so Juneteenth is now a paid holiday. And I'm sorry, on the salary side, there was one employee, one grade, one position that was changed from a grade 2 to a grade 4, which made sense based not only on the duties and responsibilities for that position, but also it placed them in a better spot on the grid, so their salary was way out of whack with the other grade 2 folks. The amount of, in the resolution, the 53,176, I'd like to point out that we did include that in our budget for this year. So that was money set aside in our budget proposal. And Linda, I don't know if you'd like to add anything.
I think you covered it quite well. And I would also like to stress that those increases were very much a compromise. And we think we have reached a contract that is fair and equitable, both to employees and to the taxpayer.
Any questions? Alderman Jettie?
Thank you. So I appreciate that, that this was a long battle, a lot of negotiations, and I congratulate you and the union for coming to an agreement. But I just have some questions to help clarify this for me. So in the analysis at the beginning of that's part of the ordinance, it talks about total cost being 4.3% in the first year, 4.38% in the second year, and 4.42% in the third year. Which, given the current, cost of living increases and rate of inflation, seems to me to be a reasonable amount. But when I looked at the contract in Article 38, subparagraph B, have I lost you already?
I don't have a copy of the contract in front of me, so
okay.
if you could
Maybe
share what that.
Maybe if I just asked the question, you would be able to answer, maybe not. But it's, in Article B, it says effective July 1st, 2024, the salary schedule will be adjusted in each cell by 2.25%. And then in paragraph C, it says effective July 1st, 2025, the salary schedule will be adjusted in each cell by 2.25%. And then when I look at Schedule A, which is on page 32 of the contract, it talks about fiscal year 24 increase of 3%, fiscal year 25 an increase of 2.25%, and 26, an increase of 2.25%. But then when I look at the schedule itself, it has, grades, and then it's got columns labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then at the beginning of each column, it says 1.25%. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Correct.
Can you
Yes.
explain that to me?
Yes, so that 1.25% is the jump from step to step. So if this year, you're grade 5, step 1, July 1st of next year, you'd be grade 5, step 2. And there's 1.25% between those steps. But the whole grid bumps up by 2.25. I'm using my hands as if that helps somehow. The grid as a whole increases 2.25% year to year. The distance between steps remains at 1.25, but grade 5, step 1, in the first year, say, is $10. In the second year, that same cell is $11.25. So
Okay,
that relates more to where new employees would be placed on the grid, or promoted employees would be placed.
So can I follow up?
Follow up?
So these columns that are labeled 1 through 12, those, those are the steps, the years of
Correct.
service?
Yep,
So each year, you go up a step?
that is correct.
Okay. And so each year, the group as a whole goes up 2.25%. So so your salary goes up 2.25%, plus for that additional year, you get an additional 1.25%? Is that
That's
the way it
correct.
works?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Next time, bring the contract with you so you can.
I would, I'm sorry, I didn't get to go to the office before I got here tonight.
Thought I saw a hand come up over here when I saw Alderman Jettie. Is somebody over here?
No, you have
Okay.
more over there.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. I see here that this contract covers 35 employees at the library.
Yes, 35 full-time equivalents.
Are you
yes.
fully staffed?
We are not fully staffed. We have 2 vacant positions.
Okay. As I look at going back to the grade and the grid, just a question for clarification. Let's say I was going to apply for a grade 1 position, but I had 4 years of prior service. Do I, because I'm doing the same job, I mean, you hired me because I had the experience, do I go in at a grade 5 or do I go in at a grade 1? I'm sorry, step.
That would depend on your experience relative to current employees. So if we had a grade 1 employee who had 7 years of service and you only had 4, but they were somehow only on step 3, we would have to bring you in a step below that individual.
Okay, okay.
Follow-up?
One more, thanks. At what stage is an employee eligible to receive a pension? I didn't see that mentioned in the contract.
We don't have a pension, so our employees are in the New Hampshire State Retirement System.
Okay, and how many years of service?
10.
10 years?
To Vestager.
That's a question for Director Cummings.
10.
Yeah.
10.
Okay.
That's why I said 10.
One more.
Follow-up?
Of the people that you have, understanding you're not fully staffed, percentage that are approaching that? I mean,
Oh, my gosh. That's a great question. I would say 60% of our employees have worked for the city for more than 10 years.
60%?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We have one employee who has worked for the city since 1973. No, more than that, because she's worked for the city for 43 years.
Gonna make it a career. All set, Alderman Sullivan?
Yes, thanks.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate you being here, but I do have a question for you. Having been a federal employee, I understand that when you get to the highest ranking of the steps from longevity and everything else like that, there comes a point in time sometimes where those that have been kind of underneath you tend to get bigger raises than you do because you've been there for longevity. So my quick question to you is there anybody that's going to lose any money with this new contract? In other words, that they're either not going to get a raise because the way the old system was, maybe their salary was a little bit higher.
No, there is no one left off the grid that way.
So may I follow up?
Follow-up question?
So the bottom line is that this contract does not hurt any single employee or groups of employees. Everybody will be getting at least the 2.25 or 3.0, what it is. If they're at the top of the schedule, they won't get that 1.25 anymore because they've already reached the 12. Do you have anybody that are within that range?
Well, the grid was carefully designed so that will not happen during the life of this contract.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Any other questions? It's not directly related, but I don't know how many people saw the union leader this morning of the raises being considered tonight by the Board of Education in Manchester. 9%, 5%, 9%, 4%, 5%, a 3-year contract. Just a reference. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, so, new business ordinances.
There is none.
I don't believe we're taking up anything tabled in committee. General discussion. No? Okay. Public comment? No, you've talked enough, Doctor. Remarks by the Alderman? Okay. Alderman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to make the motion to adjourn.
Motion on the floor is to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned at 9:12 p.m.